Okay, we'll call the meeting to order then at 7 o'clock. So we're calling to order the Village of Riverside Planning and Zoning Commission special meeting for Tuesday, August 6th. Planner, sign right here. If you could call the roll.
Sure.
Yeah.
Commissioner Marvel?
Here.
Commissioner Clarkson?
Here.
Commissioner Brahm?
Here.
Commissioner Matthews?
Here.
Commissioner Pelletier?
Here. So we have a quorum. Do we need to have a motion for me to be chair?
Yes, so just a motion to appoint you as acting chair would be appropriate. If someone were so inclined to make a motion to.
I'll make a motion.
Second. All those in favor?
All in favor?
Aye.
No roll call needed? Okay. Okay, so we have a quorum, and we have in attendance our village attorney, Robert Pickrell, right? Got it? Okay. The next point on the agenda is approval of minutes of the Planning and Zoning meeting from June 26th. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, is there any discussion, any corrections, or? Okay.
All those in favor?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, visitors, petitions, citizens' requests, and communications. Is there anyone present who would like to speak on an item that is not on the agenda? Okay. Then we'll move on to the next agenda item, which is the liaison report. Planner Cheyenne?
On July 18th, the village board considered the variation application for 162 Northgate Road and the related request for an accommodation under the Americans with Disabilities Act. The board voted to deny the variation application and to approve the accommodation, and those will be voted on by resolution at the next meeting on August 15th. And staff anticipates any recommendations that result from the applications discussed during this meeting will be considered by the board on August 15th. That's all I have.
Okay. So the next item on the agenda is new business, which is the discussion of the 2025 work plan for the Planning and Zoning Commission. We are going to table that until the end of the meeting and move on to the next order of business, which is old business, and it is.
Sign, we still have one business, the sign variation is the next item on new business.
Oh, okay. So new business is the PZ0006 sign variation at 3320 Harlem Ave and 363 to 369 Burlington Street related to the proposed Starbucks development.
No,
So-
and do we think we should discuss all of them?
I would recommend we take them all together.
That's what.
Yes.
So why don't I suggest that we discuss item 6B and all of old business as one discussion, since they're all related to the same development or part of the same packet.
Okay.
And so we would have to then read the other
So,
items under old business.
right, so in addition to the old business, that item, or the new business, the old business is PZ 240005, variations at 3320 South Harlem and 363 to 369 East Burlington related to proposed Starbuds. I see. The special use, PZ 240007, special use at the same address for a drive-through for Starbuds, and 0008, which is the site plan review for the same address at, for Starbuds development. So we're going to take testimony for all three public hearings at the same time. The public hearing,
It was four public hearings. This would be PZ 24006, PZ 24005, PZ 24007, and PZ 24008.
What was the, do you mind, the
One,
old
two,
was the
three,
sign variation?
Correct, and we're
Special use,
discussing,
And then these are other variations. Okay, so the sign variation is new business, other variations was old business.
correct, but it's all part of the same
all
development, so we
part of-
discuss them all at the
right.
same time.
Yep, just wanted to see why I had 3 instead of 4. So a public hearing to consider an application from Starbuds for variations related to a new development and an application for special use. Is there a motion to open the public hearing?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. The motion passes. Notice of the public hearing was published in the Landmark on June 5th, 2024, and will be marked as an exhibit. The remaining application materials will be marked as the second exhibit. Is there a motion to accept these exhibits?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
The motion's passed. So if anyone is intending to give testimony in regard to any of those 4 items, we'll ask you to stand and declare the following, or, so if everyone could stand, raise your right hand
If you're planning on speaking on the
if you're
application,
planning
correct?
on speaking.
Yes.
Okay. Do you swear that the testimony you will give is true to the best of your knowledge? Yes. Excellent. We also ask that if you are going to speak, thank you. At the time that you do, if you could step up to the podium and speak into the speaker, as we are televising this hearing, and that will help for those at home to hear what you're saying. So do we just start?
The next
taking
is the report
Oh,
by
sorry.
the planner. Will give the initial report.
Thank you. Anne, could you give the report?
Absolutely, thank you.
Thank you.
So just to provide some context for the discussion today, the use of a cannabis dispensary on this property is permitted by right. That's not what we're discussing today. The use of the property, as long as they meet the other standards in the ordinance, which staff will ensure they do, that's not part of the discussion today. So the use by right is already been approved per the village code. Staff did provide information about the potential vehicle trips per the commission's request, which was in the staff memo, and that provides some idea of the anticipated level of use of the property, but I do want to note that a traffic study is not required for this use. It's a permitted use, it's not listed as a requirement for a site plan review for this application. Regarding the safety of vehicle movements, particularly out of the drive-through lane, a traffic engineer working for Christopher Burke, which is the village's contracted engineering firm, confirmed the proposed drive-through lane with a right-out exit only will not be a safety hazard to vehicles or pedestrians and will not cause undue traffic congestion. So to note that condition, it should be a right-out only, which was shared with the applicant. They suggested traffic control, including a stop bar and signage would be appropriate. No, they don't need to make any physical modifications to that drive-through exit to ensure that it's a right-out. That was the recommendation of the village's engineering firm. So we have 4 applications before us, and we'll bring up the standards anytime that you'd like to review them. We have the sign variation request. We have various variation requests, which are summarized in the staff report. We have the request for a special use to have the drive-through for the retail use, and generally the site plan approval for the entire development. So those are the 4 applications that we're considering related to this. The standards for each of those, again, were included in the packet, and we can review up on the screen so that we can guide the discussion. The applicant, who will speak in a minute, made some changes to the materials which were summarized at the beginning of the staff memo, and I'll let them describe the changes that they made. And there were a couple of notes that staff added that were questions that the commission had during the last meeting. one of which included, would a glass curtain wall system require a variation? Yes, it does, and that's one of the listed variations. We included information again about the average daily trips, the drive-through lane safety, public feedback that we've received is included in the staff memo, and information about the site lighting plans. A variation is still required for site lighting, though the applicant made changes to the wall, the glass wall on the side, I get directionally confused, facing Riverside, not facing Harlem. So the lighting was removed from that wall, which obviously changed the photometric plan. Staff did recommend a few conditions. If the commission recommends approval, that's listed on page 13 of the staff memo. We can review that later, but those are the same conditions effectively that were provided during the last meeting. A couple of the conditions were removed because they've already been met by the applicant in the resubmittal. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Otherwise, I'll hand it over to the applicant to provide the presentation.
Are there any questions for planner?
I don't have a question. I just want to add something. I agree with everything Planner Siren said. There's various matters before the Planning and Zoning Commission tonight, variations and special uses and this and that. And one thing to just keep in mind, although we will be talking about this holistically, each one of these requests has a very specific set of standards. And our job is to review the request in light of those standards and see whether they're satisfied or they're not. I know there's, when conversations about a large, somewhat complex development occurs, the conversation can meander a little bit. That's totally fine. But when we should direct the conversation to those standards, which, although I don't know what the total number of them are, but they all basically relate to, is there a hardship and what is the public harm related to this proposed development and their specific requests. That's all that I have.
Thanks.
Okay,
All right. It's all yours.
that's right.
That way we don't have to keep getting up and back and forth. How you doing, everyone? Welcome back. My name's Brian Gould from BR Design. I'm the architect of record for the project.
And I'm TJ Judah, one of the owners of Starbuds and one of the members of the development team.
So we wanted to go over with you really the changes that we went back and made after we had our meeting, took in everybody's information and requests and some of their concerns that you guys had, as well as resident concerns for the property. And I'm going to go through some of the things that we did to basically minimize some of those issues. So, Ann, could you pull up let's go with the renderings. I think that'll be the best one. So previously, we had proposed LED panels on the east and west ends of the building. So that would be facing Harlem and also facing west towards, I guess you could say, the inner portion of Burlington or the residential areas in that area. So after talking with my clients and discussing, TJ actually, he was not here for that meeting. He flew in from Colorado for today. I told him that, we had a lot of concerned residents in regards to these LED panels. And so after speaking with them, we have decided to remove those panels on the west end. What we will be doing to keep the nature of the building and keep the look of the building is we are going to mimic the look of the panels that we do have on the east end to the west end by just utilizing the stucco. We're going to have the same shape as the panels on the east end. We're going to mimic, and I'll get into this, but it's a little bit more than just these rectangles or these squares that these LED panels are made of, which actually adds some architectural appeal to the building versus just lit up boxes on the building, right, with metal strips. So we're going to mimic everything we can to make it look as similar to the east end, or as it is on the east end to the west end. but we will eliminate those panels on that west end. Other than that, for the west end, everything is the same. I think the best way to go about my presentation is just kind of relate to what we talked about before, and then you guys don't get confused, or I want to make sure that everything that we talked about in the last meeting is kind of covered in this one. So as far as the west elevation, besides the removal of the LED panels, everything else has remained the same. The signage is still the same. We didn't really get to talk too much about that at the last one, but it did remain the same on this west elevation as it was previously. Go to the next one, Ann. That's just another view. Again, no changes, just those panels have been removed, and it's back to a stucco finish, which is a material that's on the other elevations as well. Okay, good. Again, these are all just renderings, so just different visuals of the building. So this is the south elevation. Materials on this south elevation did not change. We did add, though, signage on the south elevation. It was actually one of the recommendations that was brought up in that last meeting. Thank you. So that elevation now will have signage on it, which will help with people, the commuters that are on the train and such that are coming by. Okay. This is just another aerial shot of what we're looking at here. This shows the south elevation, a little bit more of the east elevation as you turn that drive-through lane and you come around the corner. It also shows the berming that we would have on the northeast corner as well. So you can see there we have a lot of landscape on that corner to obviously just create a nice buffer between the building facade and Harlem Avenue. And we will get into that as well for the landscaping a little bit later on here.
Clarify quickly, the sign that's on the south facade of the building is intended to, right now it's intended to be for that subsidiary use, not...
Correct, yeah, that is for the subsidiary use.
Thank you.
Yep. And now we are looking to the east elevation, actually a little bit of the corner there, as you can see. So a couple things that did change here, just visually, we try to recreate a little bit better of how these panels will be. It's very difficult to render this, by the way, because it's a backlit, illuminated panel. We're trying to get so many things to represent, and I'm going to show you a little bit later on some actual installation photos of what these panels look like, so you get a better feel of what they look like in real life on some other projects that are being done now. So on this facade, the only thing really that changed material-wise is really just the look of the LED panels, but this elevation here on the east end is the same as what it was in our last meeting. The north facade, what we did in comparison to what you saw in the last meeting was we added another set of opaque glazing and canopy setups here to create some more symmetry. Before, you could go back, but there were two kind of offset on that one facade, so now we have three there. And that was a recommendation as well to add that.
And with that being said, this is not reflected in some of the elevation drawings, correct?
Yeah, so the 2D elevation drawing, for some reason, still shows, I guess that actually would be a good thing. You can go back and look at that 2D elevation drawing that's on here. That's what it was previously. We have adjusted it to be three panels. So we've added another one on the east end and centered that. The one furthest to the east, we've centered and created another panel there. So there's three to create some symmetry on that building and not have such a large area facade there, just to break it up a little bit more,
Thank you.
create more of a street front presence there on that facade. So as you can see there, it changes it quite dramatically there. So this is just a little bit more of a close-up. Again, we're trying to get that look of those panels, and we're going to go ahead and look at what those look like in real life. This is something, again, just to give you an idea of a glow. So these panels, just so you know, they're not, this is not neon. It's not like the old school neon days. This is not, it's very dim, it's backlit. It's almost like a soft glow. And there's multiple projects that are going on right now in this area that have those. The other Toyota dealerships also utilize this as well for their backlighting. So it's a really nice look, and they do these projects all across the United States. So that there is just a visual, and then that's again just some different views of the site, showing more of the landscaping that's going to be put there. And as you can see, a lot of nice landscaping, a lot of flowers, breaks up that from building to street presence there on all three sides. And if you could, let's go through the panels just to get an idea.
Materials themselves?
Yeah. So when we selected these panels, there's a couple things that we wanted to look into, right? As you can see, there's opacity or transmittance options, going from either letting more light out, or very almost a white coating that would almost just make it look like a piece of white glowing, I don't know, wall or paint or something of that nature, right? And we didn't want to do that. We wanted to give it that 3D look to it when this is illuminated, which gives it some more appeal. So that Arctic snow is the transmittance or absorption that we're going to have on those panels. So while this is pink, it does give a good representation of how that light looks behind it and what it does. It plays with everything going on behind it. So rather than, again, just a plain white board or plain white illuminated panel, it's going to have some 3D effect of it going on there with some shadowing and some high points and low points of those panels as they're illuminated, and fully adjustable too, by the way. So it could be at just like an LED light, from high to low, it's all adjustable.
And to perhaps clarify, the intent is the glass without the mullions, I guess this is called structural glass. You're not trying to do, okay.
Yeah, so it's a half-inch, just over a half-inch thick piece of glass. So it's very strong glass. And then the support brackets behind there actually have to get it secured to a structural framework that's part of our building that gets.
But that structural framework is behind the glass.
Correct, yes. Yep. So that's why actually you could see in the shadowing, the darker horizontal members there is part of the structural framework, and then those dots represent the bracketing that occurs.
The mounting hardware.
Yep, the mounting hardware, yep.
Thank you.
No problem. So this is actually a job site on the Lexus dealership. They're putting up their panels now. They're probably done now, but so you could see here, you have the LED lighting behind that. Ours may be a little bit different. We think we're going to be going with more of a matte LED panel. So these are individual strips. Their paneling is the same. So the transmittance and the translucency of the panels are the same as what we'll have. The hardware is very similar to what we will have. The lighting shown on here, though, is more of setup for video, so they can actually run full videos behind the panels. So when it's 4th of July, they can have the flag going up, and not what we're doing. So we're just Nice and simple.
Outside of
It's
the.
not, yeah, and it's not Vegas. So we're gonna have it just very classy and white lighting. So, That's
So
good.
in this case, the translucent panels are the ones on the right and the left.
Yep.
And the center is prior to the panels being installed.
you got it, yeah, correct, yep. And as you can see, when those panels are up, you don't see what's behind it, it's just enough. And that's created by the distance between that glass and where we're mounting the LED lighting. So as of right now, our LED lighting that we're going to be utilized is more of a matte system. So it's actually, they have it now where you can buy it by the sheet, you cut it to the size you want, and you interconnect them all, and then you get one solid, light distribution. Here's another example where they actually use it indoors for a lobby. So as you could kind of see here, the reason why I put this one up is just to kind of show you that, it almost creates just more of this soft hue that's represented, and rather than this gleaming light that's going to occur.
Okay, that's what we've
Okay.
got, yep.
So that's kind of, I wanted to just touch base with that on the LED lighting to give you a little bit more background on that, what they look like up close, and then to let you know that we are eliminating that on the west end of the building. So that will be no longer there. I think the only other items that we had, that we talked about was the drive-through, which we have discussed that is safe, everything that we have going on there between the right turn only, the location of it, to the intersection, everything has been reviewed and is approved.
Yeah, and we'll be adding a sign at the end that says right turn only as you're passing through, as well as the street marker that shows the right turn. But again, the sign is also a good visual for people to know.
And then I think the next thing in is the signage. Do we want to talk about that?
Sure.
And I don't know
let's
if you
see.
could maybe give some feedback on the signage as far as what our allowances are and what we
Sure.
have, just to give a little bit more background on that.
Sure, so there are, based on the limitations of the ordinance, in the size of a wall sign that you can have is based on the size of the physical building that you're putting it on. So based on that, we looked at the four sides of the building and where they're proposing to put the signs. From the east elevation, which is facing Harlem, a variation is not required for that sign. The size of the building is large enough that it supports the sign, which is 91 square feet approximately. They have 97 feet, so a variation is not required for that elevation.
And, sorry,
I'm
but when
sorry.
you say that the building is large enough, what is the dimension that you're indicating is
It's
large?
the linear size of the building.
Okay.
So if you measure starting at one corner, measure to the other corner, that's your linear storefront. So if you've got a multi-tenant building, you take each tenant space and divide it up. So if you've got 10 square feet of storefront, that relates to the size, it's 1 square foot per linear foot of
Okay.
storefront that you have.
Just wanted to clarify that.
Sure. And so you've got remainder then, you've got this Starbucks sign on the west elevation. Based on the size of the storefront, and again, you're in a multi-tenant building, you're taking each tenant size. So from corner to corner, on this building, we're measuring that at 55 feet, which means they can have a 55 square foot wall sign. The requested size of the sign is the same as the sign on Harlem, which is 91 square feet approximately. So the two signs, if approved, would be the same size on either side for Starbucks. And those are the two Starbucks signs. So one doesn't need a variation, one does. And that's just based on the design of the building. The second tenant space, which is shown here as Wake and Bakery, they have, again, the two signs, the one on the west elevation, and which is facing downtown Riverside, and one on the south, which is facing the train tracks. Both of those require variations. So the one on the west elevation that we're looking at right here, corner to corner, this building is 27 square feet. or 27 linear feet, so it allows a 27 square foot sign. They're asking for this sign to be 65 square feet. And that measurement is right around the very edges of the letters. That's how that's measured, not in a rectangular box. And the same size sign would be used on the side of the building facing the train tracks. I'll scoot this down so you can see it here. And the criteria for a sign variation were included in the packet. The application materials that the applicants provided were included in the packet, and that explains why they're requesting the variation for the facade signs.
And for this south elevation, what's our linear footage there? And you're taking that only on the wall that the,
It's this tenant space, so
Yep.
from here
Yep.
to here, we've got
Yep.
50 feet, yep,
that's 50?
yep, or 53.
Yeah.
So you've got
Yeah.
50 square foot sign, yes.
I have a question. For
Yes.
clarification purposes, the applicant doesn't need a variation for the illumination of the sign, right?
That's correct.
We're just talking about the size.
Just the size,
Yeah.
yep.
And I just have a quick question. So on the west side of the building, the allowable is 97 because that's the lineal feet.
On the east side,
On the east side, sorry. I'm
Sure.
getting those confused.
Yes. I know
So
I
then
confused
on the
you.
west side, the addition of the two allowable numbers is less than 97. So I'm trying to understand why that would be in my head because it should add up to the same number.
sure. Let me pull up the.
Am I missing something on that other elevation?
Is it because they're measured separately?
Correct, yeah,
Yeah.
so they're,
It should still
This gives you,
add up.
this gives you, I think, a better idea. So
Uh-huh.
this measurement here,
Yeah.
yep, is a little bit less
Oh,
than.
because you're only, but still,
Sure.
if you add the Starbuds plus the bakery,
Uh-huh.
that should add up to the same as the other end of the building.
But I bet on the other
There's-
end.
There's
on
a
the
little bit of
east
a-
There's a little
end,
bit of a
they're not
difference.
Oh, there's
Yeah.
an extension?
A
Okay.
little
Yeah,
bit
it's not a
back.
rectangular building.
Right.
To your point, you're exactly right. The totality of it is
Is the same,
right?
yeah.
It's just how it's broken up, which is
Okay.
creating that request for a variance. Yes.
It's
Okay.
broken up differently.
Okay.
can you go back to the 2D elevations just real quick? And then east to west, so the east elevation, there's the west and then the east. So you'll see on the east, right, we have a little bit larger area on each side of the, let's call it the main center, right?
Right.
But from an architectural standpoint, if you go back to the west elevation, you'll see what I did, which is it mimics that exact same size on the east, you see?
Yes.
So signage wise, now that you kind of get a better feel of how I'm representing it, we're trying to maintain the same size signs on each side so that you're not looking, why is this one, half the size of the other one? We want to maintain that on both sides. So also too, one obviously facing Harlem will have Harlem presence. It's set back from Harlem. One facing west will have the ability to have the commuters coming back and forth on the train. We'll be able to see that as well.
And can you scroll down to that east facade again? So, to confirm, we'll call this the centerpiece, the main facade. Is that main facade the same size on both?
It's very,
Or just
very close.
marginally?
Yeah. It's very,
Within
very
a
close.
foot or two?
A couple feet, 2 feet, yeah, yep, correct.
Thank you.
Yep. It's those panels on each side that
That's the-
create the extra width of the overall
That's the
facade.
bigger change
Yeah.
in the facade.
Yep, yep.
With sign variations, as with variations generally, the biggest hurdle is often the hardship. That's the first standard for awarding a variation, which is a literal interpretation and strict application of the provisions and requirements of this chapter would result in practical difficulties or particular hardships to the sign owner because of the unique circumstances or unusual conditions on the property. Could you speak a little more about the hardships that are necessitating the sign variations?
Sure. So one of the things is obviously we have the requirement to produce a sign, right? We have to put something up there. When we speak about where the building's located, how it's located, east side facing Harlem, you know, with the way the building is, we got the train tracks, we have that intersection. We want to make sure that, you know, we could erode this building up, I think, another 15 or 20 feet or something like that, which we don't want to do, right? We want to keep it low. We're going to have a lot of landscaping out in front of this building as well, and it's set back pretty far from Harlem. So we want to make sure that that signage is not only, you know, at the right scale for the building, but also could be visually seen. Same with the west end. You know, the west end, we have commuters and everyone coming by. We want to make sure as many people that come back and forth on those trains are able to see the sign, especially for the Wake and Bakery or whoever ends up in that location. You know, the only, you know, if you went by the code, you'd have only 25 or 27 square feet allowed for that storefront, which is almost next to nothing. You know, you're talking about 10 feet wide by 2 feet tall, or, you know, so we want to make sure that that sign is big enough to see from the commuters and from people passing by. You know, we're in that corner of this lot, and we have a lot of buffers going on, especially on that west and south side.
And to add to that too, also, as far as the hardship is concerned, if you notice both of the signs, they have elements to them of the logo, which is, you know, had you shrunken them, it's kind of hard to really understand or read. Especially for me as I get older, my eyesight is going away, so trying to read stuff from that far away is really getting difficult. But in all seriousness, I mean, if you look at like the star, for example, that takes up a lot of the square footage because you're trying to get around all of that. And the way that, you know, square footage is done on signs, it isn't the actual square footage of the actual letters, it's the box around it, and so that there is some variance there. And so because of that, you know, you're going to need a little bit more space to be able to visually see it from the streets.
Thank you.
I think that was pretty much it from an architectural standpoint.
Could you remind me about the lighting? Do those lights, or is it the parking lot lights, what lights turn off at night? Is there anything that's turning off? Or was there something that was being dimmed in the like when you guys weren't open?
I think we were talking about that before when we were talking about the LED panels.
Okay.
Like we were going to have those turned off. It was one of the thought processes of turning those off at night. But you would still want to have the parking lot light on, of course, and all that. Would still want to stay on.
Makes sense, right? Okay.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to. You don't want to.
You know, and I think the idea was when Brian called out the last meeting and says, hey, listen, you know, there's obviously concerns of the lighting with the residents and being able to see it. And I can totally get that and respect it. And we've played with a lot of different ideas, but at the end of the day, it was really making sure that we respected those requests and that we could understand them and that people can live in their home and have enjoyment. And so taking that out, it was a tough decision, but at the end of the day, we felt as a team it was the right decision. And we said, well, let's just keep it on the other side. And I think that was kind of the give and take of it. And I think it made sense.
We also, too, we lowered the poles in the parking lot and the mounting heights to 12 feet. There also was a comment, I think, just making sure that the lights were full cutoff. They are full cutoff. They always were full cutoff, but we did lower those to a 12-foot. So we are asking, I think, for a variance on this, though, just because of the fact that the foot candles do go over the, is it 0? Or is it 1? 0?
0 at the property
0
line.
at the property lines.
Sure.
So we are going over that foot candle, only because of, well, basically, it has nothing really to do so much as, more so as the lighting locations that we had to put in for making sure that the parking lot's completely lit and evenly lit. So I think on the south end, is it, Ann, that we have some overflow and a little bit on the north end as well. do you have, I think,
Sure.
scroll down, I know we circled or we put the,
Yeah, I boxed out the areas where the light was exceeded, and this may not be showing up on this area, but the
Okay.
highest, yeah, here along East Burlington, I think was the highest area here.
But that
and you can
was-
see at the property line, it goes up to 9.2, this corner right here.
at that very,
Yep.
yeah, but that also is at the exit for the drive-through. So it's kind of one of those, we didn't really want to try to, yeah, and because of the way the panels are, we obviously can't minimize the lighting at the edge of the building for that overflow. But the one thing though is if you do take a look at what our numbers are, you know, down at the south property line, you know, which is, and it's actually at the curb line like we were talking about. For some reason, we do have that dark blue line at the very bottom of the page. And that's not the property line, that represents the easement, I believe. But that, remember, is parking area. So that's just the parking before you get to the tracks. So that is just a little bit of an overflow, but you could see it's not much at all on that side.
And you actually only have light poles 12 foot in the parking lot itself. The rest of the lighting is building mounted.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, correct. Yeah, there's nothing else, no landscape lighting or anything like that. So the south side is pretty much fine as long as once you get over the property line. The north side, or I'm sorry, the west side has a little bit of an overflow there on that west end, but that also too, remember, is a drive. That is a drive aisle there. That's before you get to and then it's a back side of a building that goes up. And then at the north end, you see the curb there. At the curb line, we're over by, you know, about 1 foot candle in some areas where you got centered to that pole. Even though it is a full cutoff, you're still going to get the glow off of that. But again, those are ins and outs, and that's taken at the curb. If you get, you know, 2-3 feet into the street, you're at the zero again. So we're not talking large numbers here, and we're not talking about, you know, someone's backyard either. We're kind of overflowing into public ways at all four
And
corners.
it's nominal, and we weighed that against, when you brought this up, we weighed that against, you know, just security and safety. And it was nominal, and the effect of safety and security was, I think, made a lot more sense for such a nominal change.
I apologize if you've already answered this, but the LED panels off of Harlem, is it your intention to keep those on all the time?
Well, it depends. I think, I don't know if we're going to have them on all night long, but it would be from, you know, dusk until closing time. Or, you know, we could put a timer on those too to maybe go off at, you guys close at what time?
We close at 12, and
Yeah.
most of our outside signs,
Yeah.
we generally try to take them off about 30 to 45 minutes after we close. We try to shut everything down.
That was what I was
Yeah,
And then, yeah, I didn't think it was answered.
Correct.
yeah, for the most part.
For
yeah.
obvious reasons.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And then that panel, you're suggesting it be white? Will it be white? Will it be green? What color
It's-
is going to be reflected?
You know, white was our first go-to on it. It is capable of color. It's just by nature of the LEDs, it's an RGB, so it is multicolor. Not multi, but, you know, what, pick and choose.
Okay.
And I'll be honest, I think during
Maybe,
certain holidays.
yeah, that was the one thing we're
considered
thinking.
changing that, right?
Yeah.
Like,
And you'll have that
versus-
ability to do that?
We would have the ability to do that, yeah, yeah.
And again, if anybody's ever like, oh, I'm not really sure, if you drove by one of the Toyota dealerships at night, you see exactly what they are. Lexus is also beginning to do them too, so that gives you an exact, in fact, we're using the same manufacturer.
And we can give you a couple locations too that are similar, that are around here that they're working on. I think that's it for us.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we covered everything, unless there's something you think we're missing from, trying to remember what we spoke about last time, but I think the majority of it was the concern of the LED panels and the drive-through. All right?
And from the site, this isn't really this wasn't an issue last time around, but looking at the site plans, you've got a partial fence along the south perimeter. Basically starting at the garbage corral to about the entrance into the drive-through. South edge.
Correct, yep,
And that fence goes from the southwest corner,
correct.
right there, and then it goes some distance towards the building, but it does not extend all the way to Harlem.
Right. Good question, to be honest, of why that's there. We don't need a fence there.
I'm not opposed to the fence.
Yeah, I'm
just
wondering if-
curious
is that
about
existing?
No, I don't think so, but don't quote me on that.
No, I think, I think having too much fence actually takes away, right? If you go into a lot of new developments and housing developments, in fact, they've eliminated fences, right? I think having a kind of a fence actually probably takes away from the overall feel, the look, and the openness of the lot. And so, if we can minimize any of the fencing that's already there, I think the less the better.
We'll have to look at that, to be honest with you, the civil
partial
engineer.
fence that you show is fine. I was just curious about how you picked.
Yeah,
That may be
Sorry, I interrupted
Huh?
you.
Was that it?
That may be an unintended after effect
yeah,
of
I'm
from
wondering
the
if
civil
that was an
plans because
existing fence on the property at one point.
I suspect
And
it
the
may
civil
be.
engineer picked it up, because it doesn't make sense to have that there at all, to be honest with you. There's nothing that you're,
And that
yes.
wasn't something that you had mentioned that you want a fence. You had said no fences,
No,
so,
no.
except for the enclosure.
yeah.
With regard to the, with
That's
regard.
That's why we're
Well,
here.
I'm not that familiar with these LED panels, and I just want to make sure, do you have the ability to transmit letters along the front of the panel?
No.
And
No.
I just
That was
don't,
a- that was
I
a-
just don't want
Yeah.
a sign on top of a sign,
Nope,
you know,
no,
that ability.
it's just,
Okay.
think of it as just an architectural detail, it's illuminated, a glow,
Okay.
and it's just to create some character to the building, and, yep.
Thank you.
Just one more, sorry, question about the LEDs. What about fixing them if they go? Like, is this something that's
Yeah.
difficult? Do you have to call in someone from California, or can
No.
this be done, somewhere
You
here?
just brought that up in our phone conversation. We talked about
That was my big question.
two things. One, we talked about how does it get replaced. So each one of those pieces of glass, you unscrew those knobs, so to speak, and you're able to pull off the panel. Okay, there's that separation in between, so and it's gasketed, but you're able to get behind that to fix. If one of those boards, the sheets go out, you're able to fix those and just put it back in. It doesn't take anyone special that has to fly
Okay.
out there. Yeah, because trust me, we don't want to see that either. From an owner's standpoint, we don't want to have the thing going out and then we got to wait for someone. And then the other thing that we talked about was vandalism. He was thinking, if someone throws a ball at it, or something and it breaks, it's 0.67 inch pieces of glass. So it's pretty much bulletproof glazing.
Rocks flying off the train tracks.
Yeah, it
That was
would
my
not.
biggest
Yep,
concern in
right.
talking to them.
Yep,
And I said,
yep.
listen, you're almost bulletproof.
You're good to go.
167. You really gotta try to
Yeah.
really bash it, and that may not even do it.
Yep. But very good question. Yep.
I think there is a chain link fence there right now.
See, that's what I think. I think it's just on there from the civil engineer, because he marked everything and it's just left on there. So I just put down here right now to fire him tomorrow. So.
That could be the train, couldn't that be owned by the railroad?
I think it's on our property though.
Oh, it is your property. Yes,
Yeah.
I think that's surrounding the abandoned property or the
Yeah.
empty building.
We will look at that though, one way or another, because we would not have put that in. It's an odd spot to put 20 feet of fencing and not have anything else there.
Okay, do we
Good.
have anything else from the commission? Any other questions? Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, we're here if more things come up.
Yep.
Okay. Would anyone else like to speak to this?
Is this to speak
Item?
to the architectural aspects?
Anything you want to talk about related
Any,
to the application?
any opinion you may have?
Yeah, Andrew Triba. Just wondering, why is it that if the intended exit from, say, from the main exit or the drive-through, if it's intended to go to the right, why don't you make an actual curb cutout? So I'm thinking, like, if you go to the Walgreens on Lyons, you actually, it forces you to turn right. Because the way that the cement is laid, it forces you to go right. They did this over at, I was over at Novy's Beef over in Berwyn, went through the drive-through. You have to turn right by the way that the, it's not just a painted arrow and a sign, it's an actual cement barrier from turning left. And to mitigate some traffic issues going down Burlington, I would suggest that the same thing should be done to make the ingress to the property from, you'd have to come off of Harlem and in, and then the egress from the property, the same thing, with the curb cutouts that you have to turn right onto Harlem.
You can respond if you like. Yeah, that's fine. If you want to respond.
So a couple things on that. One, obviously, we spoke with the village engineers on this. The way that it is currently set up now is good to go. We also, in our other locations where we've done dispensaries, Westmont, other locations, we've kind of gone down this avenue of trying to create, I think it was actually Westmont, TJ, that we ended up going back and forth with how much can we make the curb, and when you do that turn, you're also trying to widen it as well. And what ends up happening is if people want to go left, they're going to go left. Also here would be a bad idea, just because we are at a point, to that intersection where I do not want to try to push that lane even further east towards that intersection, right? I want to keep it straight so that you do have the room to see, look, and get out. And then as far as trying to create a traffic pattern into the space for 30+ parking spots to only come off of Harlem, it's just going to hurt the business. You can't have traffic only coming from Harlem to come into the property. You got to have that ability to come in from either direction. We're trying to do the business here, not to have only people outside of Riverside to come here. They're going to come down Burlington from downtown Riverside. They're going to come from Riverside to come to our property. So, and we want to have it wide enough also for fire trucks. So that's why we want to maintain that width.
So it doesn't change the width of the street, and I've traveled in and out, egressed and entered and left properties, commercial properties such as the Walgreens over the Lyons. There's no problem with these cut-ins. It forces them to go in one direction. If Riverside residents want to visit, there's no problem for them to go down Harlem and into the property. That doesn't limit their ability to do so. And as far as fire trucks, you're not changing the structure of the streets.
Are there any other comments?
Allison Costanzo, 191 East Burlington Street. So I live on Burlington Street. We live kind of in the middle of Burlington. It's one of the only handful of straight streets in Riverside, obviously. I have an 8-year-old son. We live on one of the busiest a very busy thoroughway. There are people who run stop signs. There are people who drive more than 25 miles an hour down Burlington. It's a hazard of the street because they want to get to Harlem. I go shopping at this, I turn down here to go shopping, to go down, to the grocery store. I know how busy this intersection gets. I don't want more traffic on Burlington because people are, to be frank, lazy. They are going to take the path of least resistance. They are going to go down Burlington. They're going to go down Herrick to get to the dispensary, which I have no problems with the dispensary. I have no problems with recreational marijuana. I have problems with traffic on my street. I have problems with light pollution. Olmsted, we live in a community that was designed by Olmsted. Why wouldn't the Planning Commission want to implement some of those guidelines and thought processes into light pollution? A town that is, Olmsted was an environmentalist. So, I think the Harlem side, the lighting, that's fine. I'm all about public safety. I have no problems with the parking lot lighting. But if the lighting's not going, the sign lighting's not going off until 1 o'clock in the morning, I feel bad for my neighbors down the street. I think it's just some common sense. And to this other gentleman's point, forcing the traffic, off of Burlington, we all know that people are going to make a left onto Burlington if you do not force them. People are, again, lazy. They're going path of least resistance. Let's just use some common sense. And if they want to be good neighbors to the community, they want this, it's a great resource. It's going to be, in terms of tax revenue, it's better than an empty parking lot. I agree. I know that you don't want to force the public, lose business because people have to a little extra time of how they come and go into your business. But why wouldn't you think about all of the people who live on Burlington, on Herrick, thinking about how this is a residential neighborhood that this is backing up to. There are children who live on these streets. There are we have neighbors who've got little kids. It's a busy street. Why would you want to increase the traffic for, people who live if you want to be good neighbors, then thinking about that and taking that into consideration is really something that, as a business owner, should be thinking about the community you're in. And I have patronized your business before, so, so I have no problem with you being here, but I think it is important to think about what the current traffic is on Burlington, and I know that a traffic study is not required. I understand that. It's extra money, it's extra dollars. But I think this is important to think about the residents who live on Herrick and on Burlington about how this is going to affect us. I get it. Social media comments don't really make it to the Planning Commission. I understand that. Most people, until someone posted, I didn't realize how this is coming, being built, how it was going to impact my neighborhood. But being here tonight, seeing that signage, I feel bad for my neighbors. I feel bad for anyone who lives on Burlington on Herrick. The added foot traffic, the added lighting, I think there's some considerations that just should be considered here. You want a giant sign facing facing the neighborhood because of aesthetics? That's not a hardship. You can make, maybe the LEDs don't have to be on both sides of the building. Maybe that's just on the Harlem side.
Yeah.
But it's a lot of light. That's a bit.
Eliminated it because of that. We only put it on the Harlem side, so that we wouldn't have a lot. That's why we did that. We heard you last time.
I missed that note, but thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
But I'm concerned about the added traffic. That is a legitimate concern, and I get that you may not want to do cutouts or force that traffic to go a certain direction. I do understand that, but I think it is important to think about the people who are living on that neighborhood on one of the handful of straight streets. Which that is, if you don't live on Burlington or on Herrick, you don't realize the amount of traffic that we do see in the speeding that happens down those streets. So in terms of your decision-making, in terms of some of these things, I hope that the Planning Commission and the village itself really make some considerations about how this will affect the traffic flow on our street. So, thank you.
Thank you.
So I just wanted to touch on a story that, and bear with me. When I was a teenager, I was doing something stupid. My dad said, "Hey, knock it off," and I said, my teenage brain out of my mouth came, "Dad, I could do whatever I want." And my dad quickly smiled and he said, "Son, what you can do and what you should do are often two different things." And I bring this story to your attention because I realize that this meeting is probably really not about what you can do. Because you could probably fit this, you could shoehorn this into this property in various ways. It's approved for cannabis use, etc. That's not the issue. But the question really becomes, should this property be used for this purpose? And it is, let's be frank here, we're talking about what is intended by the village to be a mixed-use property. And in all practical terms, this is a single-use business. Mixed use, I understand, can be a mixture of various commercial and residential, etc. But that was the intended purpose. And by making it a single-use purpose, which is to sell cannabis and infused products, infused edibles, it becomes a single-use purpose. We've been down this road before. As some of you have mentioned, there's Loyola's building was a single use, paint store, single use. There's other single use buildings in that area when the overall development was supposed to be mixed use. And now there's just limited real estate in order to make mixed use in that area. So it also, because of the nature of the business, may have an effect of other businesses such as that might want to have mixed use with residential, retail, or professional offices might have limited interest in being nearby. Going to go back to traffic. I also live on Burlington. I have a small child. My neighbors all have small children, not all of them, but many do. And if you don't live on Burlington, you don't realize the impact of traffic, of current traffic going down Burlington. 40, 50, 60 miles an hour. I'm not kidding you, routinely. I've spoken to Officer Buckley about it numerous times. I've spoken with other officers numerous times, and they say, Andrew, it's a really difficult thing to control on Burlington. It's a very narrow street. I can't put a squad car anywhere to time, and when I put my sled there, it's a straight street. So you see the sled, they slow down, and we don't get a picture of what kind of speeding is going on. I drive the Stevenson home every day from work. So coming down Harlem, I liked what one of the trustees said the other day, is put yourself in the space. Driving down Harlem, going towards Burlington, if you've ever tried to make a left off of Harlem, it's tough. In fact, I go down near the Harrison Park in order to get home. But the speeding existing speeding down Burlington is really something that the police already have a hard time controlling, and the police activity, and you live there, you see the squad cars one after the other, very high rates of speed, rarely with sirens on, with lights on sometimes. And between the regular car traffic, speeders, and the police necessarily going fast. It's a lot to handle. So I'm very concerned about the traffic and safety. The direction of traffic. I know that there's some that disagree with me, but put yourself in the space. If I live in Brookfield, Hollywood area, and I want to visit their store, I'm going to go down Forest, past RB, past into the Long Commons kind of downtown center and go down Burlington. If I live in the Lines, I'm going to go over the bridge, over near the library, take a left, go down Burlington, go over the tracks and go down Burlington. If I live over in North Riverside, I'm going to go down Des Plaines, over in front of Central, into the main district, and I'm going to go down Burlington. That's the easiest path of least resistance to get to there if you live in those areas. So it would increase the density of traffic in what are arguably going through school zones at all hours starting at 8 a.m. So, traffic impact. The data the applicant, I think you need to get some data to make some informed decisions about what actually the impacts are. The data the applicant submitted on the current traffic and expected traffic to and from the proposed Starbucks is incomplete in terms of trying to understand traffic and traffic flow to and from the site. What's estimated hour by hour store traffic through the morning, day, and during the evening hours? For example, while it is estimated the busiest hour of this morning will produce about 43 vehicle visits per hour, and the busiest hour in the afternoon will produce 77 vehicle visits per hour, the data provided don't tell us whether during all other non-peak morning hours there is expected an average of just one less, 42 visits per hour or less than that, or whether during all other non-peak afternoon hours there's an expected average of 76 vehicle visits per hour or significantly less than that. And remember, a vehicle visit to visit the store it means they get there, but they also have to get back. So if you're traveling down Burlington to get there and you travel down Burlington to get back, that's doubling the hourly traffic. Because as the applicant said, unique to their business, unlike other even high traffic businesses, is the constant in and out flux of traffic. That's what the developer said. The information provided, unfortunately, gives no information regarding peak and other hours in the evening, during heavy commute times in the morning, midday, or the evening along Burlington and Harlem. The data provided gives no information regarding whether there are statistically significant changes in traffic or traffic flow throughout the day and evening, or depending on the day of the week. These data also don't provide any data about the impact on traffic to and from the newly proposed location, which is missing. While a traffic study is not required, I think it's reasonable to have at hand so that we actually have some data to understand what it is. And I would suggest that, given the interests of two parties, the village wants to sell a property and the buyer wants to buy it, they have two vested interests. A third-party traffic study provider would need to be employed. So that gets to what are you actually voting on?
Excuse me, sir, just so you know, we typically limit public comment for each individual to about 5 minutes. This is your third time speaking, and this last session has been about 15 minutes.
Okay, I was
So
not,
why don't we just?
I'm sorry, I was not informed of that before the
okay,
meeting.
well,
And
that's
it's
fine.
not, that wasn't on the
Permit me-
website, and,
Permit me to speak.
sure.
We're going to let you finish your thought. All I ask is out of courtesy to the applicant and everyone else that you wrap up your thoughts, and if your thoughts are duplicative of other commentary, you can just simply say, I'm also concerned about traffic as well. So if you could wrap it up, I'd appreciate it. Thank
Okay.
you.
So I think it's important to understand what you're voting for or about. What is the use and purpose of this business? Before, they proposed a coffee shop. Now it's a wake and bake. Wake and bake, for those that you don't know, means you get up and within an hour of waking, you get high. I don't know, and we're talking about edibles, which means somebody could go to their site, grab an edible at 8 a.m. and leave. That wake to bake or wake and bake or whatever that the name of that place is also proposed. My understanding is that they sell products with Delta 8, which is a cannabinoid-like psychoactive substance like THC, or it's Delta 8 THC. If you go to the FDA website, there are a lot of concerns about the it's not approved for things and the medical impacts of that product. So there are a lot of safety concerns about that potential product being sold there. I think you need to know what you're voting on and what the actual intent of the site use is. Thank you. And I'm sorry if I went over. I didn't know what the rules were.
It's fine.
And I brought the wrong notes to the meeting, so I had to had to adjust.
No problem.
Thank you. Yes, anyone else?
Thank you. I've got 2 quick points. First, it's a technical point, but it's driving me crazy. The aspect ratio on this projector is off. And you probably know this, you've probably seen this, but if you don't know that already, go to a better screen, take a look at it. It's scrunched in like this. It's much wider when you look at it at a bigger screen. So, first technical point. Second technical point involves the definition of hardship. And I don't think, from a variance point of view, that threshold has been met. And if you look at how big a sign is, or where the traffic coming down Burlington is going to know or not know that this is a dispensary, pretty much everyone driving from Burlington, from the west, will know that they are running into a dispensary. Because we live here, we work here. People up and down Harlem, they may not notice that. They're going to have the large screen, sign, and that's not requiring a variance, so that's cool. But in terms of the variance of the sign, of the whole thing on the east side, I don't think it meets the threshold. That's it, thanks.
Sir, for the benefit of the meeting minutes, would you please state your name and address?
My name is Kevin Hicks. What else do you need to know?
Address, please.
286 North Delaplane.
Thank you.
Would anyone else like to speak to this issue?
Jeanette Lahart, 397 Herrick. So I'm on Herrick, and I was here last time. So thanks for all the variations. I'm a really good baker. Maybe you need, I was gonna wonder if the lights at night. So yeah, but I bake, bakery stuff, not that stuff. That's okay. I have a question about the lights. So you're open until midnight. The lights go down when?
Generally 30 to 45 minutes after the close.
Yeah. So on Herrick though, are those panels gonna be still lit?
No, the panel lighting is only on Harlem.
It's only on Harlem? Because before you were gonna do pink, Toyota, right, all that. You changed, I saw some of the stucco, but I was like, oh, very good, okay. So I'm just still a little concerned about the lighting, you know, because I know you need signs and all that stuff, but, and thank you for listening, I appreciate it. So there's still some concern about the ingress, the ingress. I loved his idea about I'm sorry, I gotta say, I love that park, like he was talking about, you know, in and out, like Novi's and CVS. I do like that idea. I know you probably don't want to pay for more changes, sorry, but that's life. Anyway, thank you for making the changes, and I just wanted to say I am concerned about traffic as well, especially on Burlington. Like, it is a straight street. I think we only have, 5 in town? 4 or 5? So I just thought, I don't know, with school opening, it's just maybe makes me think about safety again. So, you know, please consider that cutout that he was talking about. Or, what's that? Or a traffic sign, yeah. Not that we don't blow those too. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Would anyone else like to speak to this issue? Okay. Do I have a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
Second.
Motion carries. Oh,
All those in favor?
all those in favor, thank you.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Okay, so discussion.
I mean, I have one question, and this is, I'm seeing some clarification from the petitioner, I'm not sure what the best name is, and this is alluded to by the gentleman who spoke. When this proposal initially came before us, the suggestion was for the ancillary building, for lack of a better term, to contain a bakery or coffee house. And, you know, some people on, you know, this commission were like, you know, coffee shops don't succeed in Riverside, blah, blah, blah. I mean, I don't care. If someone wants to try it again, man, try again. I'm all for it. But now the current materials suggest that it is going to be essentially another cannabis dispensary. It's going to be a Wake and Bakey, which is, I know it's a small chain. I think it's based in Chicago. I know there's one in Lakeview. I think there's one in Logan Square. You know, there's a few all over. And I'm wondering if is that what is planned on going in there? And then, and let me just say this, if it is, I don't think that it's something we can really settle tonight because it's such a significant change. And I will say, if the ingredients and products sold by this entity are in fact not derived from cannabis sativa, but rather hemp-derived products, which are commonly referred to as Delta 8, that raised a host of other issues. And I'm just learning about these, but so I'm just wondering if you give us some color on that. And again, I don't think this is something that can be decided tonight. We can address the size of the signs on the building. I mean, I got all that, but I just wanted some clarity because this is so different from what we previously saw.
Yeah. Is it, can I say here today and say that's 100% going to be the business there? I can't say that. That's what we are looking at, intending. We like the idea. It's been complementary to the industry in our Burbank store. About 60% of the sales there have some sort of infusion to them, and about 40% have no infusion to them. It is not solely, by the way, it's not Delta 8, it is Delta 9.
Delta 9, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And again, you know, it's a fully legal business, state, county, federally as well, even more so than the cannabis business, which is not federally legal. So, so from that aspect of things, just want to, be very clear on that part. But again, 40% of our business is non-infused. She talked about baking, so to say, we're going to get a number, even if it's not, because we do have a lot of baked goods. We make a lot of coffees. Wake and Bakery is not waking up in the morning and getting blazed an hour later. That is just a funny term that was created in the industry a long time ago. And so so that yes, that is that is an aspect, and again it's been very complimentary.
And would this be a separately owned entity renting from you?
It
Or
is.
There's no affiliation between your business and their business in a
Well,
corporate sense?
there is minimal common ownership. There's a couple guys in the group that have that. The overall structure of Starbuds, which is an entity which we have stores across the country, is not, the parent company is not affiliated with them. Correct.
Can I ask a question about
Sure.
signage?
Yeah.
Do you happen to know the size of your current sign on the Harlem location?
I don't have that exact square footage on that one. I don't. That building is,
Okay.
as you know, I mean, that
It's a
building
lot
is a
smaller,
lot
so it's a-
smaller, and
Right.
so,
say that it's less than half
you know, and again, I mean,
So a smaller sign can be done and still preserve your logo.
Proportionately to the building.
yeah, I mean, kind of look a little funky having a small rinky-dinky sign on a really nice building that you kind of put up, that we've tried to make it kind of a grand appearance. I mean, as we worked with Riverside, we talked about, listen, the lighting panel, by the way, it's not cheap. It's, as you guys can imagine, very, very expensive. But, part of this, and even in the landscaping is above and beyond even code and requirements. But part of the discussion when we got into Riverside was, how do we make this something that everybody can be proud of, right? It's a good look. It's modern, right? It's got the modern features, got a modern look, has really nice landscaping. It's really the entrance right into Riverside. And what do we do? And listen, we've been at this for a while, playing this and how to make it, taking a lot of the suggestions. Like I said, on the other side, we had the two panels on the big massive wall, and the president. Riverside, came in and says, hey, you know what, that's still a big wall. We should break that up. And I says, you know what, you're absolutely right. We generally like to do things in three. And again, this is just bringing the whole feel and the architecture. And again, these don't come without cost, but it is an entrance to Riverside. And, listen, 72% of our customers are Riverside residents. So listening to the residents, making sure that it's something that we're all proud of. Even if there was a cost to it, and yes, there were a lot of costs, and yes, there are a lot of changes, but you know what, though, that is just part of life, and I agree with that. And so making this, going above and beyond, was really our goal here, and I think that, you guys can see from that building, we took pride in when it was all said and done, but that just didn't come from, myself or Brian or the team. There was a lot of input, and really from everybody.
Anyone
Any other
else?
questions? All right.
Do we have any further discussion among the commissioners? Is anyone prepared to make a motion? Is that where?
Yeah, well, if we're prepared to actually start making motions on these, let's try to organize that.
Yes.
So if we could start with, we'll identify one. How about
The sign
the sign
variation makes sense
variations?
to start with.
It's I'm sorry. Sign variation is P240006. We can start with going through the standards and seeing if they're met.
Do we need to have a motion? Do we need a motion first?
Well, we could discuss the standards, walk through them, and then make a motion at a conclusion to
Okay.
approve or recommend approval, recommend denial.
Okay. So the standards for, variation.
There's variations and there's sign
And
variations.
there's sign variations.
This one is
And they're
for,
not
on the
same.
board here is for sign variations.
Okay. Hold on, I have it. Was the last one.
It was the last one, correct.
The Planning and Zoning Commission may recommend granting of a variation from the provisions of this chapter only when all of the following standards are met. So every standard needs to be met in order for us to grant a variation. The first one is that the literal interpretation and strict
Sorry.
The literal interpretation and strict application of the provisions and requirements of this chapter would result in practical difficulties or particular hardship to the sign owner because of unique circumstances or unusual conditions pertaining to the construction, alteration, maintenance, repair, or remodeling of a specific sign or pertaining to the building or parcel or property in question. Unique circumstances or unusual conditions include but are not limited to circumstances and conditions relating to the building or sign design, the history of the signage at the property, and/or size, shape, topography, or location of the property.
Are we going to discuss each of these standards individually?
We are,
Okay.
yep.
I think we generally do.
All right, so if you don't mind, I would
Please.
argue that this standard is met. I'm reading this into the literal interpretation, strict application, blah, 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 would result in practical difficulty or particular hardships to the sign owner. So there's two things there. There's practical difficulties or particular hardships. I mean, at a certain level, it's a stretch saying, hey, have a smaller sign. Is that really a hardship? Is anyone hurting? I don't think so. But as far as practical difficulties go, I think there are some. A smaller sign in a larger building is aesthetically disruptive, I think. It simply doesn't look good. And I think we run into this with a lot of the code. The requirements of the code don't always fit into what's being actually built, which is why we have variances. And the sign, the signs do need to be big enough to be seen by, people driving by and people on the train, because I think that's a market. And I know that another part of the variations is that this isn't designed to it can't be designed with a profit motive. I'd argue that any financial benefit that would accrue would be purely incidental. It's not intentional. So, I don't have a great issue with these signs. I mean, I see the point, like we really, you need one on the western facade of the building where people know what it is, but, that's the main entrance. You do need a sign. I think any business is going to want a sign on your main entrance. So, speaking for myself, I believe the standard is met.
I'm not as quite as vehement in support as John is, but I'll note that the signs do fit both facades, and probably more significant to me, there is no sign on the north side of the building, which was something we had discussed last time around, that people didn't like what that view shed from the north was going to be. So I'm neutral on this, but supportive in general.
Okay.
I just, to the extent that also, a business's logo is important, and the way that their logo is would make it difficult. I mean, there's a lot of open space that is being counted as sign, and that is kind of a direct result of their logo. Yeah, you can redesign a logo, but as a retailer, you really can't. So there is some, at least practical difficulty there as well. Okay. The proposed variation will not impair visibility to adjacent properties, create dangerous traffic situations through line-of-sight problems or otherwise be materially detrimental to public welfare or injurious to other nearby properties or improvements.
I think that's correct.
Specifically with regard to a sign.
Yeah, we're talking about the
variations
signs only right
only.
now, so
Yeah.
sign, do not.
The proposed variation will maintain and/or enhance the historic or architectural character of a site or building. I think to John's point, a smaller sign would, on the facade, would be odd.
It wouldn't be
So,
as aesthetically pleasing.
pleasing, right, so architecturally, it meets that. The proposed variation will not alter the essential character of the neighborhood and will not result in a sign that is, and will result in a sign that is harmonious with the character of the applicable zoning district.
This is intended to be an advertisement for a commercial property, which is the intended purpose of, I know some of the residents aren't happy about this, but this is a business district.
Right.
Yeah.
The unique circumstances or unusual conditions applying to the specific property and sign do not generally apply to other properties and signs in the village.
It's a unique location. I mean, it really is. It's, Harlem's one of the busiest thoroughfares, in Cook County. It's got a railroad track with the, as far as I know, the busiest train line, the BNSF, running down it all the time. So, I mean, I do think this is a very unique parcel.
To John's point, I agree that with the train traffic and coming from the west and seeing that larger sign, it does make it unique. The fact that this particular property is next to the train.
The purpose of the proposed variation is not based exclusively upon a desire to achieve a higher profit from the property. I don't think the size of the sign is
I don't think
a
this is
significant.
exclusively.
Right.
There's other reasons.
It is not exclusively, that's correct. That's the key word.
Right. The granting of the proposed variation will not be contrary to the general purposes of this chapter as set forth, 4.31, this chapter, and criteria of signs as the village has set forth in 4.32 of this chapter. I think it meets that criteria. Is there any further discussion from the commissioners? Do we have a motion? Is any?
Motion to approve the variance, this particular variance.
Are we again a recommending body on this?
Yes.
Okay.
We're recommending on all of
Recommend
these.
approval.
So
Okay.
Second?
Oh, second.
Plan our siren, if you would.
Commissioner Marhold?
Aye.
I'm sorry, was that
That was an aye.
aye? Okay, thank you. Commissioner Clarkson?
Aye.
Commissioner Braun?
Aye.
Commissioner Matthews?
Aye.
Commissioner Pelletier?
Aye. And so the motion passes. Do we want to talk about the variations? Site plan review? Or a special use? I think the variations are going to be
yeah, let's do the
challenging. Do we want to do them all at the same time
Yes.
with one?
Yeah, I would say
it's-
this, there are numerous variations. If you want to talk
Right.
about them all collectively, that would, if there's any particular one you have concern with that we want to pull out, that may be appropriate, but if we want to talk about them collectively, that's fine as well.
I think in view that we're looking at a site plan review with the variations, it's better to talk to them collectively.
Okay. So, can you just review the variations that we are addressing since that has
Sure.
not been
That, the variations are found, I think, on page 25,
of the packet?
I
That's
believe.
correct.
Okay. I can go through them. Here we go.
Thank you.
And these are all going to be reflected in the site plan. The petitioners are requesting variations from the following sections of the zoning ordinance. 1, Section 1096, interior parking and lot landscaping. The request is to allow fewer interior landscape medians than is required. 2, Section 1062C, drive-through facilities. The request is to allow a portion of the landscape median next to the drive-through lane to be less than 10 feet wide. 3, Section 1084A1, design of off-street parking spaces. The request is to allow the drive-through lane to be 12 feet wide in areas. 4, Section 1056D1, B1 District Scale and Design Standards. The request is to allow the building to have public entrances and locations other than the primary street frontage. Section 1056E2, B1 District Building Scale and Design Standards. This request is to allow a glass curtain wall system, Novum illuminated glass panels as a building material. 6, Section 1056B2, B1 District Scale and Design Standards. This request is to allow the ground floor windows of a commercial building to have a transparency of less than 50%. And 7, Section 1072B, exterior lighting. The request is to allow light to shine on the public right-of-way and to allow light intensity to exceed 1-foot candle at the property line.
Thank you. So standards for variation, and I just wanted to do that because we might want, especially with the hardship, address them somewhat separately. So the first standard for variation is because of a particular physical hardship or other unusual condition of the specific property involved, a particular hardship or practical difficulty the owner would result as distinguished from a mere convenience if the strict letter of the regulation were to be carried out. Such conditions may include, but are not limited to, the presence of existing use or structure, whether conforming and non-conforming, irregular substandard shape, exceptional topographical features, other extraordinary conditions, and inherent in the subject property that amounts to more than a mere inconvenience to the owner that relate to or arise out of lot or structure thereon. Situations in which the ordinance prevents the owner from reestablishing, restoring, or maintaining material features, I think that one is not appropriate. So discussion of hardship.
Attorney Pickrell, when we start considering site plan review and variations, the general idea is that there are trade-offs within the site plan review that the applicant has made that then help to justify the complete design, yes?
Correct.
So that then does not necessarily require a item by item discussion of all the variation standards.
Correct. You can, I think it would be, each one of the variations here relates to a decision made about the overall plan for this.
The site plan.
The site plan, correct. And if you are satisfied that the unique configuration, location, access to where the roads are, everything justify this site plan, I think it would be very rational to conclude that the conditions would require variations to effectuate.
To make this site work.
Yes.
That's obviously the direction I'd rather go. Looking at this proposal as a whole, the applicant has generally listened to the commission, brought the light levels down, gotten rid of the, I'm going to paraphrase somebody else from a month ago, but a beacon that they would see from Herrick. You've taken the translucent panels, made them only on Harlem. That's generally considered by the village to be, we're less concerned about what things look like from the east. You've made the west approach much more palatable. You've brought the light poles down to 12 feet. You've promised the cutoff structures. I'll be honest, originally I wasn't thrilled about the fact that the access was only going to be off the parking lot, but I think in retrospect, thinking it through, the building with the access from the parking lot mimics what happened on the Sherwin-Williams side. So while there are, it's an imperfect, it imperfectly meshes with the TOD desires, and to have that streetscape access, I think it still works as that gateway on Burlington into the village. So, like I said, I wasn't thrilled about it, but I've come to like it a little bit more. The parking spaces, you've been reasonably efficient about them. I'm not sure small islands in the middle of the parking lot are all that good. I'm starting to become a little bit wary of those. But in exchange, you've made more landscaping all along the Harlem side. You aren't trying to make the driveway width for the drive-through too wide. There's no real reason for it to be super wide anyway, considering we should be serving single-use vehicles. Sorry, passenger vehicles. Couldn't think of the name there. The translucency being less than 50%, I believe that was a requirement from the state that you can't look into the shop. That's correct, right? So that's part and parcel of, essentially, it's part and parcel of the use of the building as a cannabis shop. We can't, that almost shouldn't even be considered here, but it has to be because that's what we do. I think I've said enough.
Anyone?
I'm just bringing this up for our minutes and for the record, because I think, as everyone knows here, we're an advisory board, so it's the village board that actually will make the final determination. I just want to make it clear that, I agree with Joel about all this, but I want to single out the landscape islands. I think the idea of forcing more islands for solely decorative purposes is actually an extremely self-defeating thing for the village and for the residents of the area, because if you put these islands in, you're forcing cars to park on the street, which is something we want to avoid. We have this issue with schools. If you ever walk by Central and Hauser, it's, cars are parked on Woodside and all the way down, not this place, but pretty far. So, this is one of these situations where, the ordinance only requires you, I think, to have like 3 or 4 spaces, which is, really, really low. You obviously want more, but then we want to have more landscaping. And I think in this scenario, it's just very, very self-defeating. So, that's why I believe, this variance should be approved, and I just want to make sure that the board's aware of that, and they take that into consideration when they review the same standards or have the same discussion that we're having now 2 weeks from now, or whenever it is.
That's helpful.
Anything further? I would just add, with regard to the exterior lighting, is this is a unique site in that it has right-of-way basically on 3 sides of it. So, and it's a fairly small site. So to try and light their parking lot and not have any overages at the lines, and it's not property lines that are adjacent to residential. They're all, it's lighting the sidewalk, it's lighting the parking kind of behind their building, and it's on Harlem. So that kind of 3 right-of-ways is a hardship. And the landscape islands, again, it's a small parking lot, so to try to put interior islands would only be an obstruction to the circulation, and they've mitigated by providing perimeter. Oh, as well as the 12-foot lane. I'm not sure it makes sense for that to be a variation. I understand where it came from, but it's a 12-foot one-way road, not really a parking aisle.
Fair point.
So, yep. Okay. So the next standard is the purpose of the variation is not based primarily upon a desire to increase financial gain. I think similar to the signage, it's not primarily even, and it's to really kind of make the use work on the site. The alleged difficulty or hardship has not been created by any person presently having an interest in the property.
That's correct.
The conditions upon which the petition for variation is based would not be applicable generally to other property within the same classification. Again, the 3 right-of-ways and small site. The granting of variation will not be detrimental to the public welfare or injurious to other property or improvements in the neighborhood in which the property is located. I mean, I know that traffic was brought up a lot this evening, and I understand traffic's always a concern when you're proposing a commercial use, but I don't believe this commercial use necessarily would produce more traffic than another commercial use that might use this property.
If it was an Aldi, it would
Right.
have more use.
Right. Or a convenience store or a coffee shop. So.
I would add on from a legal perspective, when courts review variations, increase in traffic is not usually accorded much concern because they know that, as you point out, any development creates traffic. Traffic is always a problem. It's always getting worse. And to say that there's traffic is just simply often to say that there is development. So if there's something uniquely traffic creating about this, as opposed to say an Aldi or another similar development, that would be something I think would be a significant fact. But if it is of similar traffic patterns to similar uses in the area, then concluding that that is not an obstacle would be rational.
And I hear the concerns of the residents, and I said this last time, if you ask my 6-year-olds how they describe Harlem, they say it's the worst. And so for me, this is an enforcement issue. And, you know, we can zone and plan, well, we can't zone and plan our way out of the fact that people speed down Harlem. And I don't know, it feels like we should be calling Chief Buckley more on that than, if his cars are going fast, how will, if they can't follow the speed limit, how do they expect other people to follow? That's sort of like, that's a non.
I'm going to say that this is the traffic issue for commercial property, and what's happening further west on Burlington isn't something that we can address with this site plan. There may be other things that the village can or should do, and we're not recommending that, but that they could do to address perhaps once we get into the residential areas of Burlington. And that's up to Ann to start thinking about and talking to.
Thank you for coaching your junior commissioner through the more articulate way to say that.
The granting of the variation will not alter the essential character of the neighborhood. It might enhance the character as far as what the site is right now.
Yes, it'll definitely alter from a vacant lot,
Right.
but it will be better than what we have.
I think more broadly, that's part of the purpose of zoning and the TOD was to encourage commercial development along Harlem and at these corners.
The proposed variation will not impair adequate supply of light air to adjacent property or substantially increase the congestion of public streets or increase the danger of fire, impair natural drainage, create drainage problems on adjacent properties, or endanger the public safety or substantially diminish or impair property values within the neighborhood. I think it's a commercial use, and really
think it
won't
fits
change
with the
things.
intended use.
And again, to the point of increased congestion, it wouldn't increase congestion any more than another commercial use. And those are our standards. Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve the site plan and the variations as presented.
Second?
Second.
Planner Siren?
Commissioner Marhold?
Aye.
Commissioner Clarkson?
Aye.
Commissioner Braun?
Aye.
Commissioner Matthews?
Aye.
Commissioner Pelletier?
Aye.
So that was the so that was the variation and the site plan in one motion.
Yes.
So we got the two.
So, standards for special use.
One thing,
And these are not, we do not need to meet every single one of these, is that?
these are, you could just consider them.
Consider them,
Yeah, and let
yeah.
me just double check to make sure I'm right on that. And
I
as I'm
believe
double checking that,
is-
let me add that drive-throughs are not allowed under state law yet on cannabis dispensaries, but they may soon be. So this relief, what we can offer you, if the board is inclined, is a conditional grant, which is say, subject to the amendment of state law. This will be, yeah, okay. As long as we're all clear on that, okay.
But they'll still use it for pickup and deliveries, whether,
As long as, and we can ask them
Right.
what they're going to use it for, as long as it's not a drive-through. What is your intended use for it? Prior to drive-through?
Yeah, prior drive is exactly what Commissioner, like you said, it's deliveries will all go through that kind of back door area right there.
Not through the drive-through window.
Yeah, not
The
the
rear door that's not the building.
So in terms of granting the special use, oh my gosh, I looked at the wrong thing, I'm sorry. My understanding is you do not need to satisfy every single one, but I'm going to hear them. I'm sorry. No special use permit may be granted unless, and you see, my apologies, you do have to satisfy each of the 7 standards.
Okay. So the special use is only for the drive-through? The proposed use is designated by zoning ordinance as a special use in the district in which the use is to be located. Yes,
True.
right? The proposed use will comply with all applicable regulations in the district in which the use is to be located.
That's true because it's
Considering the
paired with
variations.
our other approval.
The location and size of the proposed use, nature and intensity of the operation involved in or conducted in connection with it, the size of the site in relation to it, the location of the site with respect to streets giving access to it are such that it will be in harmony with the appropriate and orderly development of the district in which it is located.
That's true, and there actually was a drive-through ATM in a similar location.
The location, nature, and height of buildings, walls, and fences, and the nature and extent of the landscaping on the site are such that the use will not unreasonably hinder, discourage the appropriate development and use of adjacent lands and buildings.
It'll have no impact on the other adjacent properties.
Parking areas will be of adequate size for the particular use, properly located and suitably screened from adjoining uses, and the entrance and exit drives will be laid out so as to prevent traffic hazards and nuisances. We've approved that through the site plan.
We've also been
And-
told by the village engineer that this exit is okay.
The proposed use will not cause substantial injury to the value of other properties in the neighborhood.
We don't believe so.
And at least 1 year has elapsed since any denial by the village board. That is true.
It doesn't apply.
Not applicable.
Okay. Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve the special use?
Second?
Would that motion have to be subject to it being approved by
It's
Illinois law?
conditional on
Yeah.
state law. I don't
Right.
think we can violate state law in our
Correct.
recommendations, so.
Yeah, and.
Well, then I
and if-
second that motion.
Though it does occur to me that that staff had recommended some conditions
For the site plan.
for the site plan. Okay. So,
Oh. Do we have to go back to the site plan vote then?
Can we make it conditional to
yeah,
this?
Yeah, well, I would suggest completing this one, but then
Okay.
if we want to, we've approved it, we can make another motion to add conditions if we like. So but I would suggest first, I think we're right about to vote on the special use permits. Why don't we do that? And then we can make another motion to add,
And
impose
then
any
we can
conditions.
look at the conditions.
Planner, Siren, I think we had a second, yes?
Yes.
Commissioner Brahm seconded.
Okay.
Commissioner
Please.
Marvel?
Aye.
Commissioner Clarkson?
Aye.
Commissioner Brahm?
Aye.
Commissioner Matthews?
Aye.
Commissioner Pelletier?
Aye.
Did you want to review the recommended conditions for the
Yes,
site
would
plan?
you
Please.
review those?
Sure,
Thank
and
you.
that's on page, I'm not sure, on the
Page
page of the packet.
30.
Thank you. From page 13 of the staff memo. So I don't have this to bring on screen, but primarily, these have to deal with the layout of the site plan and a minor adjustment in spacing and measurement. So the first recommendation, and it sounds like may not be relevant based on the discussion of the commission, was that there's a recommendation to increase visual interest in the elevation. I think there's some sameness to the elevation. One of the staff recommendations was to add some architectural details to the brick veneer on the south elevation to create visual breaks in the facade. It's a recommended condition. Obviously, the commission can choose to consider that or not. Because there was a large expanse of lack of visual interest. Regarding this area here, in terms of spacing, there is a standard space. The standard space here could be redesigned to be 9 feet wide, and I apologize, I don't have, the breakdown is further in the staff memo, but I'll give you the highlights here. And basically redesigning the space to pick up 2 feet. So overall, these ADA spaces, I think there's a little bit more room than there needs to be. So an ADA space plus a loading area should be 16 feet total in width. I think this is about 2 feet or maybe 3 feet wider than it needs to be. I think the center space needs to pick up a foot in width to be a standard space. Staff recommendation was to then provide an extra wide area here to basically add that space to this island or to this island to just make sure that the spaces are standard. Pick up, maybe add some additional landscaping. It could be that the bicycle storage right here could interfere or be a conflict with this loading area. Perhaps relocating that to the edge here could be desirable to get those bicycle spaces, bicycle parking out of this area. But that's the extent of the summary of the recommended changes to the site plan. And then a few others as a condition of the building permit, not as a condition of the approval, but as a condition of the building permit, make sure that the windows are set back into the facade. That's required by the ordinance. And just a note that staff will work with the petitioner to identify any conflicts with existing utilities in the right-of-way, and to add waste receptacles next to the drive-through lane at the entrance of the businesses to make sure that waste is picked up.
And Ann, I apologize, it was page 35 of the overall packet and
Oh, I'm
page 13 of your memo.
Thank you.
I have no issues with any of the staff recommendations, and I'd like to append them to our recommendation.
So I believe the motion, this was the recommendation on the site plan. So you would like to impose the conditions on page 35 recommended by staff onto your recommendation of approving the site plan?
Correct.
Okay. So there would need to be a second.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay.
All those in favor?
Commissioner, or planner, Siren? I'm sorry.
Oh, you're right.
Yes, I'm just
Call
taking
the
a
roll?
note, sorry.
Okey
Yeah.
dokey, that's okay. I wasn't sure if you needed
I've got
my
it, thank you.
request or you could do it
Yes,
on your own.
I heard it, I'm just,
Okay.
Commissioner Marvel?
Aye.
Commissioner Clarkson?
Aye.
Commissioner Braun?
Aye.
Commissioner Matthews?
Aye.
Commissioner Pelletier?
Aye.
That's it. You guys got everything. Appreciate it. Thank you guys. Pleasure. Thanks for your time.
So that will be on the next board meet, or?
Yeah,
That'll
do we
be
do-
at the August 15th board
August
meeting will be
15th.
the final decision on the applications. Yep.
I'm sorry.
Because we're just a recommending body. Village board approves.
Thank you.
Can I just make one more comment before you gentlemen leave? You know, my initial comment, you know, I mentioned the issues with the retail space. I mean, I do think there are other provisions of both the zoning code and possibly the Riverside Municipal Code that are going to present some significant issues of what we put in there. You know, specifically like a bakery, you know, what type of goods it can sell, what other goods it can sell. So I just want to make sure that that's, I mean, I want to make sure we're not approving a wake and bakey in there right now. I just want to make that clear as that.
Correct, we're not approving a wake. Just the variation, site plan,
Just the variations.
special use.
Yeah.
We did not approve wake.
Yep, understood. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
You can sit down, we're not doing the meeting yet. So,
At-
yeah, I think we have to go back
Back
to,
to the,
So we're back to new business?
back to new business, which is item 6,
901, not bad.
the initial discussion of the 2025 work plan.
Yeah, so and for primarily Commissioner Clarkson's benefit, because you've all been through this process before, the village board requested that the Planning and Zoning Commission prepare their work plan in advance of the board's September 19th meeting, which is why we're discussing this now. This will be included as part, as a budget cover in the budget, so that the staff prepared a draft 2025 work plan, including the goals from the 2024 work plan, with one new goal, which is to draft text amendments for front-loaded garages. And if you'll remember, we discussed this earlier this year. That was at the direction of the village board. They asked us to review the elements of the 2018 draft of those text amendments that weren't included in the 2020 amendments. So the 2020 ordinance was approved. There were some elements of that 2020 ordinance that were discussed in 2018 that weren't included. So we reviewed that as a commission, and we'll revisit this later if your memory is failing you. But I got your comments from that. We'll put together later this year a set of draft amendments to bring to you for your consideration. And the idea is to kind of close the loop on that. We had the recommendations made. Some of those didn't move forward. Let's revisit those, see which one of those we want to adopt. And for the remainder of the items, I know we have a long list, and the board strategic goals were also provided for your benefit and reference. We have our 2024 accomplishments to date, and that includes some for 2023 that weren't included in the 2023 accomplishments. But for 2025 goals, I know that we've got, and all of these should be familiar to you with the exception of the front-loaded garages, which is added. I know that this is a meaty work plan, and it's staff's intention to tackle impervious surfaces and the driveway amendments with the balance of the year. So you should see those items on upcoming agendas. But just to revisit towards the top of those are our top two goals. Some of the remainder of these goals are less involved than those issues are and can be tied together, I think, in almost a general set of amendments, and we can discuss those specifically so we're not coming back to you with repeated public hearings. We can combine a few items and come back before you. But I'm interested in taking any feedback that you have. I'm interested in having direction from you so that hopefully we can have a finished document at the end of this meeting, or direction that I can revise and take to the board.
And this is the input you're requesting, as
Yes.
we look at the impervious areas
Mhm.
and parking lots in particular, and John perhaps said it a little bit more eloquently than I did, but I think we should revisit what we want out of landscape islands and parking lots?
Okay.
And is there a better way, while still maintaining the area of green, that they not be limited to islands, that that area can somehow be redistributed to the perimeter to make a larger green space that's actually viable for something to grow? Does that make sense? We kind of talked about
Okay.
this with the D96 islands and shifting those around, and we probably could have addressed it better with the apartment buildings along across the way where the islands really don't work very well.
Okay.
So I don't think it's a separate item necessarily, but
Sure.
it fits within drive aisle widths
Yep.
and impervious and parking lots.
Sure. Oh, yep, there's the drive aisle with school.
And I don't know if this fits in anywhere, but it occurred to me today, I'm not sure why we don't allow glass curtain walls.
I'm sorry?
Glass curtain walls.
That is a great question, and I do not know the answer to that.
Okay.
I've also wondered why mansard roofs are prohibited.
That was another question I had.
Are permitted or?
Prohibited.
They are prohibited.
What
They're
are
Mansard roofs are
'Cause they're
prohibited
ugly?
in the B1 district in terms of a site design.
I'm sorry, what?
Mansard roofs.
Oh, yes.
So angry, I'm picking
It was on my list of curiosities to do some research and find out why that might be. There are areas of the code that aren't listed here that I'd like to revisit. That's one of them is building materials.
Okay,
In
yeah.
terms of prioritizing, I think, we've received direction from the village board that their priorities are impervious surfaces and the front-loaded garages as a start. I think we can make some headway on that, and then I think look more broadly at other changes to the code, building materials,
Yeah.
things like that, which I think is a very relevant question.
I would also like to elevate the lighting standards,
Okay. And that was
just to be maybe the third priority. Is just, like uplighting and glare and restricting, making sure. Well, it was reviewed, the village
Okay,
lighting
it's here.
standards. To reduce, nuisance.
Reduce
I
nuisance
think
lighting.
that may have been an item of C4 as well.
Pardon?
The C4.
C4,
It's-
the
yeah, you
cross-community
remind-
collaborative.
Oh,
That's the
sure.
part that I was missing, cross-community collaborative.
Climate collaborative, I believe.
I think that may have been one of their items in
Yeah,
terms
makes
of
sense.
environmentally friendly
Yeah.
improvements.
Okay. So you're just gathering information from
I'm
us?
gathering
There's
information.
no-
If you all are comfortable with those changes, one, expanding the impervious surfaces to include commercial parking lots and landscape medians in the discussion of that, and two, moving the lighting standards to point 3 in terms of priority, I'd be happy to make those changes and forward this on to the board as your goals, if everyone's comfortable with that, if you want to take a voice vote or something like that. I don't know if that's required, Bob.
Just general direction.
Just
and
general
we're not
direction?
reviewing
Okay,
right
thank
now.
you.
It's fine.
Because I think I think order matters, right? And to say to previous comments, like, we hear you on the lighting, and there's
Yeah.
things we can control and things
Mhm.
that are zoned the way that they are. And so I think moving it up shows that that we didn't put it at the bottom of the list.
Sure.
Okay.
Okay, great, thank you.
So I think there was one more item on the agenda that we can,
8A, I believe.
8A, the Planning and Zoning Commission's role in reviewing improvements in public parks.
Yes.
Oh,
And
that
I-
was something John mentioned last time, I believe.
He really likes this.
This is personal. I mean, I think we should maybe just table this.
Okay.
Just give it the time of night, and maybe I can just talk with Ann and just like clarify, because I think this is, so my goal here would be for the Planning and Zoning Commission to have some type of at least advisory authority over any signs that the village wants to put up beyond standard street signs or wayfinding signs, right? Or street signs or safety signs, right? I'm talking about the signs in the parks, obviously, that really bugs me, but I'm over it now. But, but right now, I believe the village board is considering like kind of an entry to the village on the corner of Long Common and Harlem. And, I mean, I'd like to see what signs they're gonna put up there, or at least have some input on it, because that corner is already just a riot of signs. I mean, so I think, you know, we're charged with this in other areas for private entities. I don't think the government should be immune. I think we should at least be allowed to offer an opinion.
John, in general, you're correct.
Yeah.
I mean, we've got this sign ordinance and we have to discuss it at length. I don't think any signs, regardless of who's installing them, should be outside some set of review conditions.
So,
I take
don't
your
know, is
point.
that something we propose to the board, or?
Sure. So I would ask the commission to make a recommendation for the board's consideration and discussion. That would be, so the commission has a set of powers, which are listed in this section of the municipal code. Review of public improvements on public property, like signage like that, is not one of the listed powers.
Add signage to that, yes.
Sure, so that would be the recommendation from the commission for the village board to consider. If you wanted to make that direction, Bob, if you could assist me, would that be a
Sure.
voice vote? Would that be a motion and then a voice vote? Would it be general direction?
Yeah, so I think the goal here is you want to, I mean, what you're doing is proposing a change to the village code to require that these sorts of signs come before the Planning and Zoning Commission? Is it?
I think the recommendation is to have the village board discuss that as a change to that
Yeah,
section
that
of the
could just
municipal code.
be, you can, if it's just a matter that you just want her to raise the issue, you can do so without a vote. If we're actually
Okay.
proposing a specific change, we would have to properly notice that.
Well,
and-
sure,
right.
to actually change the code, but this
Right.
is just to bring the issue before the board.
Yeah. I
Yeah, to
think
gauge
that's-
your interest, I think.
To
Yeah.
ask, that's all that's.
Okay, all right. Is that?
And I would agree with that. So if we're taking a voice vote, I would
There's
say
general
aye.
consensus.
There's general consensus,
thank you.
yes, that we should do that.
And I'll update you on that, obviously.
Is there not general consensus?
Okay. I think that is the last item on our agenda. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Think?
Oh.
Do-